Hey, I'm Kieno Kammies and welcome to Innovate Africa. Our focus is very simple. We focus on businesses that impact the lives of ordinary Africans, but we also focus on the people who assist those businesses achieve their goals. Today, we chat to the former head of Levi's in South Africa, senior executive at Levi's in Europe a few years ago. Today, he's giving back. Today, he shares stories about brand, about marketing, but more importantly, how do you actually tell your story to achieve your goals? Michael Joubert, thank you very much. What a history. You've worked, as I said, as a senior leader in Levi's Europe. You headed up Levi's South Africa. You've built the BrandsRock business. You've exited that. And now through your Billybo Group, you're giving back through mentoring. So if we look at that part of your life, what is the common thread that connects all of this together?
Kieno, lovely to be with you. You know, it's interesting that you mentioned thread. It took me many years to figure out what that thread is. And it's very simple. The thread is working with people and sharing in their success and helping their success. And as that thread goes through multiple entrepreneurs, multiple businesses, a beautiful cloth emerges, a strong cloth that is woven into something that is economically much stronger than if the individuals had to do it themselves. That's what gets me up in the morning.
So now we've touched on the thread that's connected all of this together, but what's the one thing, or maybe few things, that have actually led you to moving on to that second part of your journey? Because there's always great learnings, great experiences that lead us to our next big thing. What was yours?
I'd say there are two things. One is I realized at a very early age, in fact at university, the value of mentorship. People who have been there, people that I look up to. I had to grasp the art of listening to understand. Because when you're young, you think you know everything. So that was one. And secondly, not shying away from opportunity. One thing I can say candidly today after 35 years in business, right? All the opportunities that have come across my desk, I've grabbed most of them. Some have worked exceptionally well, some not so well. But if I had to do it again, I would grab exactly the same opportunities and I would apply the same passion, energy, and intellect to making them realize.
Mike, I'd like to expand a little more on your role at Levi's. What exactly did you do? And secondly, what did it teach you about making a big global brand relevant in local markets like South Africa?
I joined Levi's as the CEO in South Africa. I was the first South African CEO. My two predecessors were both American, great American brand, right? And the one thing that struck me about the brand, and I still hold dear today, is that it is fundamentally founded on values. Bob Haas, who's a direct descendant of Levi Strauss, who was CEO from the 70s, 80s into the 90s, Bob Haas always used to say value through values and profit through principles. And I realized working for Levi's that it is possible to do good business, to have a healthy business, to have a business based on values and make money. And by the very nature of what we did, particularly from a global point of view, clothe the world. That was our vision. It still is. We want to clothe the world. And you'll invariably find a pair of Levi's on people's butts all around the world, probably on all 7 continents.
You once said that strategy, which is the word that a lot of people try and run away from because they don't really understand it, right? But you once said that strategy is nothing but a bridge of decisions that links purpose with performance. What did you mean by that? If you can maybe extrapolate for us.
Yeah, I've often said that strategy is a bridge of decisions between your purpose and your performance. That's just my way of summarizing it. But it is most important for me anyway to understand, and I share that often, that strategy is misunderstood. Strategy is nothing more than making big decisions or making decisions that will fundamentally affect the health and wealth of your business, as opposed to a strategic plan. A plan is a plan you execute. It's based on strategy, but it's not a strategic plan. So strategy is a bridge of decisions. You make decisions based on your environment, your variables, your data. And I still believe that there's a good measure of instinct and gut that goes with that. Even the best and biggest and brightest CEOs in the world end up making decisions based on all the evidence they've got, but they still make the decision based on the instinct that they've honed over years.
A lot of the things that we discuss interlink, intertwine. We talk about brand. I'd like to focus on culture. And culture for me is one of the most important things because it's one of the key building blocks of the story that you actually create as a business. So what does one have to do to stop leadership from using culture as just another little tick box on an Excel sheet?
That's a great question. It also pertains to something you asked earlier. I believe there's a fundamental difference between brand, marketing, and advertising. Marketing is all to do with the science of communicating and getting people to listen to you and buy your stuff. Brand, however, is much deeper. The fabric that weaves culture together, right, are the people who work there. It's everything that we do or say, how we pitch up, and how people interpret us. We used to live in an economy where everything was pushed. In the 60s, the cigarette companies said, doctors tell you to smoke. It's good for you. And people did. Now we live in a pull economy. We, the consumers, through our handheld devices, we can figure out anything. There has been a massive shift to consumers wanting to understand who you are and what your purpose is. What is your cultural disposition? Are you a good company to work with? So to sum it up, culture is a strategic competitive advantage if it is done well and if it's taken care of, not just by the CEO, but everybody in the business.
Purpose, of course, yet another important component. It's the one thing that grounds us in everything that we do. But in your mind, what are some of the warning signs that a brand, that a business has actually lost its purpose?
The first warning sign is if it just lives on a PowerPoint or on a post on your wall. The warning signs also include when people behave different from what you understand your purpose or your culture is. And that is a collective leadership challenge. Behavior is at the heart of living your purpose. If that's missing or if it starts showing strain, then you've got a problem.
I briefly mentioned storytelling earlier, and storytelling is just one of those key tools in your arsenal that you need in order to get things done. We're limbic beings, we're emotional beings. We need to be emotionally connected. You can't emotionally connect me to an Excel sheet, to a sheet of paper with a whole lot of writing on there. But you can grab my attention, get me to listen through story. So how do you, especially in this busy world where there's a lot of clutter, a lot of noise, how do you get brands, or what advice do you have at least for brands, to cut through the noise and get their story heard?
That's a difficult one. First of all, a great story needs space, and you create space by making people stop, pause, and take notice. And that can be a combination of really great visuals, authentic audio that goes with it, or a story being told, or even a soundtrack. And great brands who get that well do it consistently. They never miss a beat. They don't have new ads every second week. They just do the same thing and keep telling the story in such a way that people pause. A great story connects with you emotionally. It's not what you do, it's who you are. And that's what people are interested in. If they believe in who you are, they might consider using your product and eventually probably become loyal to it.
Some people make up stories, other people like authentic story. Which one do you prefer, or is there a place for both?
They probably both have a place, but you always lead with authentic story. Great brands have authentic stories. Apple has an authentic story. Inditex, which owns Zara, has an authentic story. Stripe, two Collington brothers from Ireland, has an authentic story. Those who know. Pam Golding Properties, who I'm currently doing some work with, they have a story. It's fundamentally rooted in one person who started a business and drove it over 50 years into now the most recognized real estate brand in South Africa.
Mike, what you said about sound is important, video is important, because a story without clear sound, authoritative sound, without good visuals is not an effective story, right? So what I've done, I've just taken the liberty to give you a bit of an insight into how you can get started with telling your story. I mean, you need to know your story, right? But we'll help you build your business story eventually over the next couple of shows. But there are tools that you need, and it doesn't have to be as expensive as people think. Just take a listen to this. I've put something together for you. So let's take a peek into my bag of tricks. I fit in 2 cameras, great audio equipment as well, Audio is more important than video because if they can't understand your business story, the video doesn't matter. So what's in the bag? This is the Wireless Pro. You don't have to get the Wireless Pro mics. You can get the ME as well, much more affordable. But what's inside? You get this thing called the receiver. Now, the receiver receives a signal from the guest that you're interviewing. This gets put onto a camera, either a phone or a traditional camera, and it brings great quality audio in. What goes onto the guest? Well, you have to transmit audio from the guest to a receiver. So this is the transmitter. This Rode transmitter, once again, very small, very compact. You take a little microphone with a cable called a lavalier, plug it in, and that transmits the audio to your phone or to your camera. There are two of those in the box, so you can interview two guests at the same time. Really, really handy, actually. And then for a studio environment, I use the Rode Pod mic. This one is the USB, which I prefer because that plugs straight into my computer. I can control the sound dynamics of the microphone on the computer and get beautiful, crisp, broadcast quality sound. On the back there's a thing called a Canon jack. That's just the professional jack for professional mics, but you have the headphone jack for your headphones, the Canon jack, the USB I spoke of, and you can control your headphone volume at the back as well. It also comes with a thing called a pop cap, which allows you to sound a lot better than some people who pop all the time. So that will not happen with this mic. Then for video, if you've got multiple cameras, this is a video switcher, which also comes with great built-in audio, by the way. Rode is an audio company, so they spend a lot of time on audio. Two professional microphones there. You can also monitor via speakers. Then you've got your headphone jacks that go in. You can also take the signal out to a particular monitor to see what's happening with the cameras. And then you've got 4 cameras, HDMI cameras you can plug in the back. You can also stream that through to YouTube, etc., and connect it to the computer and control this whole device on your computer. I like the Rode ecosystem because it works, but you don't have to use this particular ecosystem. I use it because of their attention to the quality of sound. Well, you see, it's really that simple, Mike. So important to get things across clearly. Now, we've spoken about sound, and on the topic of sound, you've said that each brand has their own soundtrack. Can you give us an example of what you mean by a brand having its own soundtrack?
Yeah, I deeply believe that every brand is a soundtrack. It's a metaphor for who you are. You know, as human beings, we evolved over time with sight, sound, smell. And it's just a fact that from a neuroscience point of view, people remember songs. They remember what song was playing when they kissed their first girl. Brands are the same. The soundtrack for a brand is every single thing that you've experienced over time put together in your mind cognitively that gives you a positive feeling. So if I mention a brand and you smile, or you at least feel positive, it means the soundtrack is familiar to you. If you mention a brand and you are in doubt, something in that soundtrack is missing. Either it doesn't exist or you've had a bad experience. So soundtrack by its very nature is made up of instruments, singers, mixers, producers, conductors, and that's how a brand is built. As Jeremy Bulmer once said, people build brands like birds build nests. It's from the sticks and straws that we chance upon. So like creating a great song or a great piece of music, you must either be the curator or lead the assimilation of all of those elements into one single thing. Great example of that for me still is Google. If you go onto Google's landing page, there's no advertising around that little letterbox, right? That is a simple, powerful song right there. When I open it and I start typing, the possibility of what comes out of that letterbox is what gives me hope and opportunity, and I need to find something out. It gives me a positive response. I'm not interested in their business model. I'm interested in what Google means to me. So for me, the soundtrack of Google is a happy song. It's like Pharrell's Happy. When I open Google, I hear Pharrell's Happy.
It's easy to discuss Levi's, a company with big budgets and telling your stories, etc. But what about smaller businesses that don't have Levi's budgets? How do they go about telling their stories? Do they need lots of money?
Absolutely not. Most people I speak to have never heard of Amancio Ortega. Amancio Ortega founded Inditex in Galicia, Spain. Inditex owns Zara and a number of other brands. Zara spends 0.03% of their revenue on so-called marketing. They just tell stories all the time. The Zara story when you walk onto the floor is less is more. There are never more than 10 garments on a rail. There's always 2 meters around every rail so you can walk around. And then the shop assistants tell you about Zara and their products. People who shop there tell you about their story. So no, you don't need a big budget. Just start telling your story. If you start a business, start telling the story for those around you. But tell it clearly and authentically. Don't tell people what you do. Tell them who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. And then tell them why your product or service is relevant to them. The what's in it for me. And do that by storytelling. If you're not a good storyteller, you can learn that, right? Even crib, learn from people who've done it well, mimic them, tell your story.
What is the difference between a story that entertains and a story that sells? Or are they interlinked somehow?
That's a great question. I'd say that it should be a blend of both, but it should start by entertaining. It should arrest you to take note, it should arrest you and make you smile, it should arrest your attention and say, hang on, I'm interested. And if there's something of entertainment value or inspiration value or education value in that story, I'm more likely to consider. The trick is then to take the story continuum and build a call to action into it. Sort of subliminally, if you like what you've just heard, consider, not buy, consider our product.
Are there common mistakes that you see marketers and brand managers or brand owners make when it comes to telling their business story?
Yes. The common mistake I see all the time is when someone tells you what they do. So what's your story? What's your brand? Well, we do this, that, and the other. That is a surefire way to lose interest. Why? Because everybody else is telling that story. It's very difficult, if at all possible, to differentiate anymore. You've got to be relevant. So your story starts with who you are. And in doing so, I'll use an example, Sequoia Capital, right? One of the biggest VCs in the world. Go and look at their website. When you land there, there's not a single word about VC. There's a single line that says, we help the daring build legendary companies, right? So they're speaking to me, the entrepreneur. I know they're a VC company. They don't have to sell me that. But I see myself as a legendary founder who wants to build a legendary company. So that's a great example.
A lot of people might be listening to you going, geez, if only I could have those insights in my business. But what advice do you have for founders starting their businesses? What's the one bit of advice that you wish you got a lot earlier?
Trust your instinct, but do your homework in that order. Everybody today has the ability to study, whether you do it formally or whether you do it online. So the intellect and the competence that you gain by learning, everybody can do that. The one thing that is evident in entrepreneurs is that grit and resilience that is based on instinct, making bigger, bolder decisions and living with those decisions. I would say trust your instinct, do your homework.
Mike Joubert, thank you very much for your insights. And on Innovate Africa, this is what I'm talking about when I mention empowering your business. I'd like to give you the tools, introduce you to the people that you probably would never have the opportunity to have access to. And those tools will help you build a stronger business. Those tools will help you achieve your goals for that particular business. It's not the last of the whole storytelling side of things. We'll continue chatting to more people who use story effectively, and I'll be sharing more tools that you can actually use to help craft those stories. You have yourself a fabulous day, and I'll see you on Innovate Africa next week.